I'm Gerald Bentley. This is Wrestling with Sales. Today, we are joined by Justin Knipper, international PR person for Pro Wrestling Noah. They just finished up the bye-bye match for the great Muta. And now we are on Wrestling with Sales, seeing what we can pull from Japanese pro wrestling into sales in the U.S. Justin, thanks for taking some time.
Hi, Gerald. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I was super interested in the big event, right? With the great Muta, one of the legends of professional wrestling, somebody I watched when I was in high school, and got the shirt on here, Sting.
All right.
Having the final match. It's truly amazing that the two guys were still competing at this stage in their life after 40 years. And it really kind of brought attention back to Pro Wrestling Noah, which I think is trying to make inroads into the U.S.
Yeah. More than fair to say that. That's definitely one of the missions that Pro Wrestling Noah has, and also Cyber Fight, the umbrella company under Cyber Agent Acquisitions and IT company from Japan. But as far as Noah goes, the brand under Cyber Fight, making inroads into North America, not just the States, but North America, Canada, and Mexico, and taking it step by step. Although there's a lot of things, wrestling can be pretty fluid sometimes, and things happen, and awesome chances happen, and you got to go through with those. And on the other hand, weird and crazy things happen too, so you have to be fluid. And luckily, while we were preparing for all of this, the Bye Bye Muta show, like you just mentioned, right before that, something happened and things fell into place, and Noah was able to book Shinsuke Nakamura from WWE right before that, which is, you can have your plan in place, but if something comes along, good or bad, you have to really be able to roll with the punches and go with it. And I wouldn't say that Nakamura thing was a punch per se, but I would say, it happened so fast. It kind of didn't come out of nowhere, but from when the company got the okay to when it was announced, it was less than a week.
Wow. And it's a huge gap too, because generally the WWE has been closed off to all the other organizations. But to let one of their superstars go back to Japan is great.
I think it was win-win for everybody. It wasn't just any one-sided deal. I think that WWE and Shinsuke Nakamura, they got a nice dose of publicity, and I think Nakamura got a lot of buzz because I don't follow him too much in WWE, but I think when people saw how much of a star he still is in Japan, I think it created a hot buzz for not just for Noah, but for everybody, for WWE, Nakamura. And so back to what you're talking about, we're talking about brand building or rebuilding today. When you have a chance, you just got to go with it. Even if you have a great plan in place, when things happen, you just kind of got to go with it and see where the road takes you. And it's very early to say. And of course, this is a wooden table, so knock on wood, but we'll keep the momentum up.
Yeah. So for viewers, because I try to make a lot of analogies between sales and wrestling, because I think every sale is like a match, and you want to go in and win, and it's just a great analogy with one-on-one competition or team competition, tag team competition. You can see the intricacies that go into a sale and the intricacies that go into a wrestling match. For people that are watching this, so they're probably familiar with WWE and AEW, and I also do a show for Las Vegas wrestling scene, FSW, Future Stars Wrestling from there,
I'm familiar,
and the other companies in Vegas. Can you tell them a little bit about Pro Wrestling Noah, why they should follow it, what they'll see when they watch some of the matches and some of the shows?
I think, it's a great question, Gerald, because it sounds easy, but it's not so clear-cut and straightforward. What makes Pro Wrestling Noah different or special. Let's start with comparing it. We have to compare it to New Japan Pro Wrestling because that's, if we're talking sales, we're talking business, that's the main, not only competitor, but an ally as well. It is wrestling after all. We're all here for pro wrestling. So what people should know about pro wrestling, especially these days, is that right before the pandemic, they switched management. Again, Noah was under a lot of different management companies over the past, 8 years, 6-8 years. There've been a lot. It hasn't been settled backstage yet. I mean, things are fine, but they're not solidified until right before the pandemic when Cyberfight acquired the company. So now that things backstage, behind the scenes and financially are more stabilizing and evening out, I think the company's been able to solidify a more Noah roster, people that are wrestling for Noah, not just guests, although Noah does bring in a lot of guests for lots of dream matches that might show up once or twice and then leave. But for Noah, I think you can expect a more stable and great roster, more and more options to watch on Wrestle Universe, the streaming app that offers not just Noah, but DDT and Tokyo Joshi Pro and all kinds of other options. Lots and lots of HD options and ways to watch Pro Wrestling Noah. And hopefully, there's a lot of stuff that we can't say yet, but hopefully there will be lots of more options to watch Pro Wrestling Noah in the United States through various different ways. So, and also, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, who are some of the wrestlers that people would be familiar with from Pro Wrestling Noah in the U.S.? I know Timothy Thatcher, formerly of WWE and currently in Pro Wrestling Noah, was just on AEW against Bryan Danielson, but who are some of the others?
I don't know if you watch Impact, but there's a young fellow named Anthony Green who is just wrestling on their program. He's also a member or part of Pro Wrestling Noah. He's part of a new group or stable called GLG, Good Looking Guys, with Jack Morris from Scotland and Jake Lee just came from All Japan Pro Wrestling, and he just debuted in January 1st. So other names we might be familiar with, like you said, guys like Sting and Darby Allen showed up, so you might get guests like that earlier. Or I got not this year. Last year we saw people like Rob Van Dam, Super Crazy. Fellows, do you remember Simon Gotch? He was in WWE NXT for a while. He's been known to show up in Noah. Chris Ridgway from England is a regular there. There's actually next week the wrestler Dralistico will debut with Noah. He is the older brother of Dragon Lee and younger brother of Roosh. In CMLL he was Mystico 2. He'll make his debut next week too. So all kinds of international stars in Pro Wrestling Noah, but also I think a lot of people heard about the news with Kaito Kiyomiya, GHC heavyweight champion Kaito Kiyomiya, and Kazuchika Okada. They got into a little a tiff, you could say, a couple weeks ago. They got into a little brawl, and they're going to have a match next week in Tokyo Dome to settle the score. So there's also a lot of bigger Japanese stars, not just from Noah, but people from New Japan that come through. Satoshi Kojima has become a regular since last year, who's a New Japan representative. People like Great Okan showed up last year. I think you'll see a lot more interplay between New Japan and Noah this year too. So if you already are a New Japan fan, I wouldn't be surprised to see, like next week, El Desperado is going to be on a show teaming with Nosawa Rongai, just kind of a special appearance. So that's another cool thing about Pro Wrestling, though. If you're not completely familiar with all the characters, there'll always be a few faces. If you're a wrestling fan, you'll recognize or be familiar with so-and-so. And hopefully, as this year goes on, there'll be more women's matches, too. There was a women's match at the Bye Bye Muta show early on, and talk of more women's matches coming up as well. So
It's
hey, let's
been
see
a
what happens.
been a trend in Japanese wrestling to get the men and the women back incorporated on one show, because historically it's been two separate shows or separate companies even, right?
Yeah, separate genres almost.
Now, how'd you end up getting involved in Japanese pro wrestling?
In Japanese pro wrestling, I've just been a nerdy fan for a long time, most of my life. So I was when I started taking wrestling seriously as like a job, was about 5-ish years ago. I was an editor on Sabu's autobiography. I was an editor, and that was my background, writing, editing, and such. And of course, I was a fan, and I had ties to wrestling, but nothing completely. And when I started editing the book, that's when I started. I dove into the business, and from there, I started working at the Wrestling Observer website, writing on the ROH beat for a while before the pandemic, and I do lots of fill-ins. I covered New Japan Strong from first episode till its last episode last week, and so lots of writing for websites like Observer and Fight Game Media, doing podcasts on Fight Game Media. Taking the fandom seriously and taking it to the next level with writing, and like what you're doing with the podcasts and stuff like that. From there, I had an opportunity. I spoke with people at NOAH last summer. They were offering, they had this bounty hunter program for wrestlers. They wanted people to apply to NOAH to help them get more popular overseas. And they had a $300,000 bounty, they called it, to offer. And I saw that, and I said, well, I'm not a wrestler, but here are some ideas that I think that you could use to become more popular internationally. And basically, pulling it back to business, I wrote a business plan for them, about 9-10 page business plan. I sent it to them. And after a couple of weeks, we worked out a deal, and I started working for the company. So at the end of the day, it's business that wrestling companies are interested in, because the only way a wrestling company can survive is that it needs money, it needs cash. So it becomes that match that you were talking about, that kind of war of trying to get what you need to survive for a company. It's all the same, the basic stuff. It's the same at the end of the day at its root.
Well, when you look at it, I mean, you're not going to get a much more competitive atmosphere than that, because you're competing with WWE, with AEW, with Impact, NWA now, Ring of Honor starting back up, FSW does pay-per-views, and there's independents that are doing great work in really every major city in the country, plus, of course, the big gun, New Japan, which you see the influence of New Japan in every pro wrestling organization in the world.
Sure.
There's just an article out tracking the members of the Bullet Club and how influential they are at every rung of the ladder in pro wrestling right now. So it's definitely something where you're in a competition from go.
It's competition, but it's also, with wrestling, it's different than, say, sports or even like movies or television, in that there's it's competition, but there's also a lot of common ground. And with NOAH, there's a lot of ability to, hey, let's make a deal where everybody can benefit. And I think when you're not tied down to rigid way of doing business, if you're open and fluid to, hey, if something comes our way, let's work it out and see how everybody can benefit. Those situations tend to benefit fans the most, customers the most, because everybody's happy. Everybody goes home talking about wrestling and enjoying. So,
yeah, and you definitely showed the ability to work together with Shinsuke Nakamura coming from WWE and Darby Allen and Sting coming from AEW. You got the two big guns to actually work together, so that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a revolving door. It's kind of, think of it. NOAH is also like a stage, as well as not just a team or a company, but a place for great names to do great wrestling. It's like an open stage. It's anybody's really invited if you can handle the heat in pro wrestling. No, but otherwise it's not like a sacred. You know what I mean? It's anybody can come through if they want to come through. It's just different. Wrestling's different these days. When we were growing up, it was almost like sacrilege if you went from a WWF to a WCW ring. Seeing Scott Hall show up on WCW back in the day, that blew our minds. Holy moly!
Change the business.
I called my friend immediately when that happened. What's going on? What's happening? Because it was so out of the ordinary. But fast forward a couple decades, it's not. You see that every week. So
yeah, and it is. It's ever changing. Now let's take just a couple of seconds to learn a little bit more about our sponsor, Montway Auto Transport. Hey, auto dealers, do you know where your vehicles are and when they'll arrive? I know the inventory management challenges dealers face, so I'm certain the answer is a resounding no. But Montway Auto Transport can change your answer to a confident yes with the Montway Automation Portal, better known as MAP. MAP offers a smarter way to move and manage orders while giving you end-to-end visibility of all inbound and outbound units. You can upload VINs, get pricing, dispatch the orders, and track every unit on the dashboard. Leveraging MAP can save you time and money and get your vehicles to your lots quicker to sell. With MAP, you can book, track, and manage your inventory from one revolutionary platform. See MAP in action at www.montway.com/WS. Write this down. It's www.montway.com/WS and put your dealership on the map. And you can go right to the web address there, www.montway.com/WS. Just working on broadcasting and getting that platform. And you said there's a platform that people can sign up for, and they can go ahead and see the matches, see the shows. And is there an English language commentary too?
Yeah. For Noah and for actually a lot of the Cyberfight divisions, if you go to wrestle-universe.com, or if you type in Wrestle Universe in the App Store on your phone, whether it's Apple or Android, Wrestle Universe is a streaming platform where you can watch Pro Wrestling Noah, DDT, Tokyo Joshi Pro, Ganbare Pro, all kinds of lots of other loose like AEW related. Like if you see a wrestler who is associated with Cyberfight, like Konosuke Takeshita, you often can watch his matches from Rampage or Dynamite on Wrestle Universe as well, for example.
Oh, really? Okay.
And like you asked, yes, there is English commentary for many of the Noah shows, and for quite a few of the other brand shows like DDT and Tokyo Joshi. I'm not sure the details on that, but for Noah, we have on English commentary Stu Fulton and Mark Pickering. They often cover the big shows, and you can. What's cool about Wrestle Universe compared with some other streaming platforms is that you can be on your app and you can be watching matches, and you can switch an option between Japanese and commentary. And on quite a few of the videos, you can go match by match. You can click on a match chapters.
Okay.
So you can switch right to it. Kind of similar to how WWE Network used to be. You can just kind of fast forward or click right to where you want to go. They just added comments. You could do live comments on the live shows as well, Japanese or English. But that's Wrestle Universe is a big part of Cyberfight and pushing not only Pro Wrestling Noah forward, but all of those brands forward. Wrestle Universe is the platform to see all of these, and this is what the company wants to push. This is the revenue builder the company wants it to be. No matter what happens, when you get somebody like a Shinsuke Nakamura in, or you get the big Muto final shows, all this stuff, they want subscribers. It is about the numbers, and hopefully these things that we're doing will lead to lots more subscribers on the excellent Wrestle Universe app. It's a lot easier to use than some other apps too, and continually improves, and it's cool. I hope that more people are using it, more people accessing it, and enjoying it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because there's lots of great content out there. It's there's a whole different world out there. Because in Japan, there's how many major promotions are there in Japan right now?
You know what? Here's a fact. In Tokyo alone, there's over 100 indie promotions.
Wow.
There are a lot of very small local. Like colleges have clubs, like pro wrestling clubs, so the kids put on show. There's a lot going on, and that's Tokyo. That's one city. So, bigger companies, there's a handful. There's a handful. I would say New Japan, Stardom, which is also associated with New Japan Women's Company, Noah, Dragon Gate, located more like Southwest, All Japan Pro Wrestling, that new iteration of it. It also depends on the style. If you like more of a deathmatch style, there's Freedoms in Big Japan Pro Wrestling, and if you like more lucha libre style, Osaka Pro Wrestling, and it depends on the style that you like in wrestling too. But there are lots of options. You can go down lots of rabbit holes and get lost in the wonderful world of pro wrestling in Japan. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's amazing. I thought Las Vegas had a lot. Hey,
Vegas is a great wrestling city too.
Yeah. Go to the championship round here. We've got the dealership rescue belt. Just ask you a few quick questions to wind it down. What do you think is the single biggest element in building a brand?
The company or person or whatever it is that is the brand or is going to become the brand has to be familiar with the identity. What are you itself? Like what are you selling? If Noah was a company that did wrestling but also did interviews and also made merchandise and it wasn't clear on what's the main deal, why am I watching, it would hurt the company because it's not clear what the identity is. I think having a brand identity, it gets more complex depending on the industry, but if I'm going to sell you a glass of orange juice and I don't put on the carton that it's orange juice and it's an orange color, it's just kind of a bottle with an indiscriminate name on it and color, what am I selling you? I don't know. Who's going to buy something they don't know what it is? So I think being able to, and that's something that's kind of with Noah at least, and for me, it's a challenge for me. Like, what is Noah? Why is it different than New Japan? Why is it different than WWE or AEW? There, like you said, there's so much wrestling out there. I could easily turn something on and be pretty satisfied with what's going on now. I mean, if you're a fan of wrestling now and you were a fan like we were 20 years ago, wrestling, the quality is just crazy now. If you love wrestling, it's a great time to be a fan. But that means on our side, how are we going to make it better and how are we going to stand out from all this awesome wrestling? I saw Kenny Omega, Will Ospreay. I'm thinking to myself, I'm just crossing my fingers to myself like, man, I hope it's not a good match. Of course it's going to be a good match.
Sure.
It was amazing. But that means it's good for fans. That means it's good for the business. And they know what they're doing because they know what they are. And businesses, if you really know who you are, what you're selling, why it's effective and why people should buy it, having a strong brand identity and being familiar with it is really important because that's one step in explaining and expressing what you want your customers to know.
Absolutely, because that is the end result, right? Whatever you're selling, if it's selling pro wrestling shows, if it's getting people to come to a restaurant, if it's getting people to buy a car, at some level, you're selling a experience, you're selling a relationship. And the more you can create that in a digital medium, the better you are. Now, just one last question. What should people be looking for from Pro Wrestling Noah coming up here in the next few months?
Next week is going to be one of the biggest Noah shows of the year at Tokyo Dome. Not next week. Excuse me. 2 weeks from now.
Okay.
February 21st. It's going to be on pay-per-view, so it's going to be on Abama pay-per-view, and you could buy it through Wrestle Universe. This is something you'll see more, especially with the Japanese companies, is you'll sign up for your streaming service and purchase a special event through that streaming service. Kind of like how ESPN does it with UFC these days. Same situation. So Keiji Muta will finally retire, have his last match against Tetsuya Naito, which is, it's amazing because Tetsuya Naito actually decided to become a pro wrestler when he saw Muto's match in Tokyo Dome in 1995 against Nobuyuki Tsukada. This beautiful story will come to an end. He'll face his hero it's going to be on Tuesday, so it's a unusual day for a show, but it's Tokyo Dome, so they need to book it when they could book it, I think. So that's coming up. That's the main thing, and you can watch through Wrestle Universe and pay the extra fee for it for the premium live service. But yes, Wrestle Universe, there'll be a lot more events that we'll be able to announce after Muto's final at the Tokyo Dome. But as of now, and also this week in Osaka, GHC heavyweight champion Kaito Kiyomiya will take on Scottish Shock Jack Morris for the GHC heavyweight title. This will be right before his match with Okada, so that'll be on Wrestle Universe as well. But mostly you can always check Wrestle Universe or Noah's website and Twitter. Lots of exciting things coming up, but the big one is his final match at Tokyo Dome, and the big card, February 21st.
Well, that's great. Hey, Justin, thanks a lot for joining us here and stepping into the ring. Appreciate it, and we'll be sure to log on to Wrestling Universe and check out Pro Wrestling Noah moving forward this year. Thanks a lot.
Gerald.
Sure.